know, it's a truth to that. And plus, truthfully, all of us, the bodies inherit the past. You see, there's nobody that hasn't inherited the past that's in it. Everything that's in the past is in us. We find ourselves, you just look at it, your mother is in you, your father's in you, and you go back, they're all in you, and other things are in you. You pass things down. People are suffering from certain diseases now that some of their ancestors had, that they brought on, and they may pass those things down. That's why we tell people, be conscious of what you do, because it may not just affect you in terms of the foods and things you do to your body, but it can affect those down the road who come from you, etc. So there were attempts to connect back with that life. We think something in the genes. So we had movements in America, and now we do know in America's history that it was a Muslim country that was the first one to stand up for America and recognize its independence. You know, and then we broke away from Great Britain. They didn't want to serve, continue to be a colony of Great Britain. And the very thing that moved America in terms of all the statements about freedom and independent expression to worship, etc., certainly all the same things that the slaves were saying at some point when we go back and look at all those statements when they get ready to make that breakaway from Great Britain. But the Muslim country, Morocco, recognized, not only did they recognize and have a treaty with America, an alliance with America, they also began to protect the waterways, protect the ships and everything else. So there was something that new, you know. So we had movements like Noble Drew Ali, the Moorish Science Temple, you know, connecting with the Moors because of the great history of the Muslims of Spain. And of course, we find in history the great civilizations that lasted. I think that was the longest lasting empire, maybe 600-800 years. Ottoman Empire was like about 600 years, but the Moors of Spain probably lasted a lot longer. But under that society, in terms of freedom, the Jews, right now we're in great relationships with Jews internationally and nationally. They say even today that their greatest achievement, scholarly speaking, was achieved under Muslim rule in Spain. So I'm just saying that was a great time. So there was a connection to get back to that. Although Drew Ali wasn't from there, it was something, he was beginning to use language. And we just said he did some studies in Egypt, etc. But he was trying to use the language, but he made some mistakes in that the Quran that he gave was called the Seven Circle Quran, which was not the Quran that Muslims have universally. And he didn't really focus much on Muslim and Islam. He mainly focused on Moors and that language. And of course, today they still have what's called the Moorish Science Temple, what they've identified. That's just one of the strong ones of the movement. Then you obviously have Marcus Garvey with the movement Go Back, etc. All of them, none of those movements produced the full Quran for the people. But then he had this other movement that was an individual named, he called himself many names. He was a mystic. He called himself W.D. Farad, W.F. Farad, Wallace Farad. And he clearly came from the area that's known today as Pakistan, because of what he called it at that time. He was talking about the 30s, 20s and 30s. And he began teaching. What he did was, he put a master plan together. He studied all the movements in America. The Daddy Grace movement, all the divine, all these different movements, Noble Drew Ali, Marcus, and he came up with something that would produce the best. And what he produced, what he was sincere. He was sincere, because in all of that, he gave them a language and some mystical knowledge. He gave them the whole Quran, and he said, "This is the true book, the Word of God, etc." And he said that I know you all don't know this now, but he found a disciple named Elijah Poole, who later became known as Elijah Muhammad. And many don't know this though, but Elijah Muhammad wasn't the first one to find him. It was his wife, Clara Muhammad, who heard the teachings of Farad. And at that time, we're talking about Great Depression had hit in America. Elijah, again, he's coming from a religious family because his father was also a preacher. Not being able to take care of his family, like many who fall on hard times, they turn to the vices of life instead of the source of life, and so alcohol and those kind of things. He was drunk a lot. No, because of his pride, you know. Like many, he couldn't take care of his family, didn't have a job. It hurt to come home. It was difficult to stand up straight and watch and look at your family. So he turned to those things. And his wife knew him to be better. And after she heard this individual's teachings, then she actually carried him to hear him. And after Elijah heard him, he had 10 cents in his pocket. And that's all he had to donate to that cause. He donated 10 cents to the cause. But he became very astute, and so he was the one that became that Farad. He was looking for somebody, so he began to teach him.